Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked, locked. There we go. Your dial is set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us today. We broadcast 2 hours, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. through 11 a.m. Central Time, and tape delayed all over the world. Thank you for being in class today. Brad is engineering the broadcast at Genesis Communications Network. Guineith Isaacs is with us. I'm Vincent Finelli. Welcome, Guineith.
Hello, Vincent. How are you this morning?
I guess I'm well. I guess it's dark in Australia this morning. Is that correct?
It is. The electricity's gone off.
Yep.
So I'm sitting in the dark.
Guineith is broadcasting from her farm in Australia. She lives off-grid, so both ends of this broadcast. Guineith in Australia from her farm off-grid, and me from our farm in Missouri off-grid right now as well. So this is, I believe, the world's first solar broadcast, end-to-end, live. Guineith, I wanted to welcome two of our newest students. I was on the phone last evening with Stephen and Carolyn, both from the Commonwealth of Virginia. I know both of them, and they are joining our broadcast as students today. And I was on the phone with them last night, and we were talking about, one of Dr. Shealy's recommendations, magnesium. Magnesium as a transdermal supplement, okay, because the body absorbs magnesium, and it can really help and fix maladies such as irregular heartbeat and so forth. So we talked about that, and we talked about, did we actually put a few guys on top of a rocket, blast off, circle the moon, get off, walk around, get back in the capsule, come back home? Did we actually do that? No, we didn't do that. And then we talked about weather manipulation, geoengineering, and are we really manipulating the weather? Yes, we are. And we talked about what's wrong with our children's education. So that was it was an introduction for Stephen and Carolyn as to what we do, and I know they are listening right here, right now. Thank you for joining the broadcast. And here's something that, Guineith, you might find quite fascinating. So yesterday, right after the broadcast with Rich Shealy, I ran outside, started working on the tractor, and, to prepare it for baling hay, which is what I did yesterday afternoon. And I was working on the tractor, and Mrs. Finelli said, there's a phone call, and caller ID says it's the police. So wow. I'm thinking, oh, man, I was thinking about all the things that we said about the police, and I thought, gosh, I really need to get this hay done, and are they going to come and visit me, and are they going to interrupt my progress? What are they going to do? Well, it wasn't that. It was actually kind of nice. One of our class members, one of our listeners to USA Prepares, happens to be a police officer, and he just had some more information based on what Rich Shealy and Mark from Philadelphia and I were talking about. We were talking about how if you have a company and you give ownership to the employees, it seems to work a lot better. And this is something that came from Spain, and something that I tried to do when I was in the Commonwealth of Virginia. There was a factory that closed. It was the Shaw rug factory, and in our little hamlet of 500 people. And I approached the town and I said, here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to give half the company, really 49%, to those 100 or so people who've been laid off, fired from the plant closing. And we want the plant, since they've abandoned the plant, we'll take it off the tax rolls. We will take over the plant. I will hire everyone who is laid off. I'll teach them how to be in marketing, be in manufacturing, quality control, shipping, receiving, inventory, tech support, writing manuals, every aspect of running a computer manufacturing company. Be like a little Dell computer company, for example. That was what I wanted to do, and have ownership be to these people who were laid off. And I was laughed at, so, I gave up that idea. Well, that's what Mark the Spark was talking about yesterday. So I got this call from this police officer, and it was an official duty phone call because it said, police department on caller ID, and he had some suggestions for me. And I thought that was great. And so I asked him, Guineith, you're not going to believe this. So I said, do you listen to USA Prepares? His answer, quote, every day, end quote, every day. And I said, how can we make the broadcast better? Because that's the question I ask. Yeah, that's the question I ask, everyone I talk with on the telephone who listens to USA Prepares. How can we make the broadcast better? He said he didn't know. He thought it was pretty good the way it is. And he said what makes us different is the way we approach all kinds of subjects. We're not just politics, like most of the other broadcasts, right? We talk about what's wrong and how to do it, or how to do things better, or how to save money, or the way we do things, or the way we approach life. So I thought that was quite fascinating. Now, I did call him back because I had caller ID, and I can find it on my screen, on the telephone, and I can hit dial. And I called 3 times, and I got his voicemail. So, yes, he is a police officer. Yes, it's for real. And I was quite surprised that, we've got the police listening. And, one other thing I asked him, and this should be quite telling, class. We've been maintaining that the police are corrupt. We've been maintaining that the sheriffs are in the gun running business. We've been maintaining and saying that, the cops are have a ticket contest or a ticket quota. So I asked him, I said, so you listen, and you listen every day. Now I'm paraphrasing. How do you feel about what we say on USA Prepares, what I say? He said, you're right. You're right. Now, can you imagine that? Can you imagine that we got verification from the blue team that we are right in the things that we're saying? Now, we knew we were right. It's not a question that we were doubting ourselves. It's just the point that we got verification. Guineith, how do you react to what I just said?
Well, it doesn't surprise me. I've had an idea for a long time that they know that they're corrupt. They know that they're doing the wrong thing. And, we're not against the police per se. We're only against them acting as a bunch of thugs. They are there, they've got a job to do. Their job is to be a restraint to wickedness. We are not wicked, therefore they should leave us alone. Okay, that's perfect logic. But,
Absolutely.
It's the same logic as Romans 13. Everybody loves to quote Romans 13 to me. And a lot of the time when I do the police are corrupt type broadcast, I'll get somebody on Ron Gibson's YouTube channel, and they will go on the channel and they will quote Romans 13 at me. If anyone wants to know what Romans 13 says, go and get out your Holy Bible and go and read it. But mostly they only read the first 7 verses. They never or hardly ever read when people are doing a Romans 13 sermon to say that we should all submit to the government. They always somehow neglect to look at the second half of Romans 13, and that is the justification for government. Okay? And the justification for government is that we all ought to love one another, and that love is the basis of the entire law. Okay? Jesus Christ, when he was walking on the earth, himself said, he had he had a lawyer come and talk to him, and this lawyer said, what's the most important law? I'm paraphrasing here, but Jesus said to him, what does the Torah say? What does the law say? And this lawyer said, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, all thy soul, all thy mind, and all thy strength." And Jesus said, "You have spoken truly." And then Jesus continued, "And the second is like it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself." And it's really, really important to realize that this lawyer knew the answer. He was just trying to trip Jesus up. And it's the police know that they are corrupt, and they come to us and they try and trip us up. Okay? That lawyer was the law in his day. The police are the law in our day. They know the answer. They know that they should leave honest people alone, that they've done nothing wrong because they're honest. And it's just really, really interesting to hear an actual police officer say it. Now, I want to ask this police officer if he's going to have the courage to opt out of their ticket quota competitions and actually begin to enforce the actual law, the law that is written on the human heart. That is, every law that's written, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not covet, thou shalt not kill. All of them can be summed up in thou shalt not love thy neighbor as thyself.
Great point. Great point. And when I call him back, hopefully today, I'm going to ask him if he's willing to opt out. Now, I did ask him if he was willing to come on the air with me, and he said no. He does not want his voice to be heard or known. We'll be right back. Class, for those of you who might not have heard us say it, I think that 99% of the cops give the rest a bad name. Guineith, are you in about that same camp, or do you feel differently?
I would say around here 100% of the cops give the other percent a bad name. They're all corrupt around here. I can't name even one police officer in this district that would really be honest and really there to, be a restraint to wickedness. They're all wicked here. There's not even one good one.
In your neck of the woods in
Australia.
They're all here to
be an extortion racket.
Mm-hmm. I got a call from one of our instructors. He said, "Hey, Vincent, I got 2 tickets to see Donald Trump in Springfield, Missouri. Would you like to go with me?" And that's this week. And I said, I don't think I can do it. And here's why. And I don't know if he was surprised at that point or not, but I said, I don't think I can do it because I think I'd be arrested. And I've been, the cops have been called on me multiple times in Springfield, Missouri when I show up at a convention. And typically there's 3 of them in front of me ready to grab their pistols, and one behind me in case the other 3 miss. Yeah. And so I explained to him that the reason I didn't think I should go is that I'm probably on the list. Not that I disagree with Donald Trump. I don't. I like what he's doing. But because the Springfield cops would just love to, escort me to an interrogation room, I believe, because of the things I say about the cops. And, we had conventions. After a while, I refused to hire them. The deal is when you have a convention and you have guns, you hire policemen or women who are off duty to just, kind of be there to, just as a deterrent maybe. And I found out that they are price fixed in Springfield, Missouri. So if you call and you know a cop, let's say his name is Tom, and you call and say, I'd like to hire Tom for our event, maybe Saturday and Sunday. Would that be okay? Well, no, you got to call the lieutenant. The lieutenant says, okay, well, we've got a guy. We'll assign him to you. You don't get to pick your guy. You get who they send you. And not only that, all the guys are the same price. It's price fixed by the police department. So you can't call your neighbor and say, hey, Tom, can you be there? No, you have to go through the police department in Springfield. So I object to that. So we stopped using those guys. We stopped using the police. And we figured, what do we need the police for? Seriously. We've got Mike Ma, we've got Storm and Norman Cantwell. I mean, these guys, Mike Ma is a trained killer, right? I mean, he's a Marine combat soldier. He knows how to kill, if he had to. And we've got Storm and Norman Cantwell, who the movie Roadhouse was set up after. It's his life. We've got plenty of guys who are martial artists. We've got Ed in Florida. He's a mixed martial artist. We had plenty of people. And we had our own guns. So we didn't need the cops. So I don't think they took kindly to us not hiring them off duty and paying them a price fixed outrageous amount. Well, I want to talk to you for a couple minutes about something else, and that's flooding. Would it be okay with you if we talked about the flooding and what people need to worry about in, Hurricane Florence, the flooding in Virginia?
Yeah, absolutely.
North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. Okay. I was talking to, so the point is about Donald Trump. I thought I shouldn't go because they're probably going to have facial recognition, whether they admit it or not. They'll see me going through the gauntlet, through the roped area. And there he is. Okay. Let's invite him for, we'll show him some blue plague hospitality. So I didn't want that to happen. We come back. We'll talk about the flooding, and I'll give you some of my thoughts, and I know Gwyneth's got a million thoughts as well on what you need to prepare for, because it's coming your way. Combine that with the tariffs, and it's going to be a pain. We'll be right back. Guineith Isaacs is with us live in Australia, as she is on Wednesdays. So, Guineith, we're talking about flooding. Now, this massive flooding that's going on right now in Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia as a result of Hurricane Florence. So these are my opinions. I do not have a crystal ball, but I can look historically at what's happened. And I can give you some connecting of the dots. So here it is. Back in 1973, there was an Arab oil embargo. About 5% of the fuel was withdrawn from the market because of this Arab oil embargo. I think Mark Twain pronounced it Arab, but I was taught to pronounce it Arab. So the Arab embargo caused lots of problems. Gas lines around the block. Gas lines maybe 100 cars long everywhere, all across the United States. No one was exempt except for government corporation employees. Yeah, they got gas because they were doing necessary things. And doctors got gas because they were doing necessary things. But the rest of us, the bottom 93% of us, had a tough time. And we would wait in these long gas lines in the dark in the mornings. Well, that was just as a result of a 5% withdrawal from the marketplace of gasoline. All right. So let's look at Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, the southeast coast of the United States. So it was pummeled. Now, do you think it's a possibility that 5% of what people need and buy might be affected by this? And what do I mean? Well, if there's flooding of, let's say, 6 inches in your house, and plenty of houses were flooded way more than 6 inches, but 6 inches, that means that your refrigerator, if it's, let's say we're talking about a house that's on a pad, concrete pad, okay? Well, actually, it doesn't even matter because if you have 6 inches of flooding in your first floor, your basement's flooded anyway. So here's what would be damaged. That would be your refrigerator, because your refrigerator compressor and some of the electronics are at 6 inches or so, or lower, off the floor. Okay, dishwashers, that's where the motor and pump is, and some electronics. Your furnaces, your washing machines, your dryers, your air conditioning systems, your heat pumps, and your cars. Okay? Cars have been flooded, so the wheel bearings have got water in them, the axles have gotten water in them, the transaxles have gotten water in them, the water softeners might be damaged, dehumidifiers are probably damaged, light trucks are damaged. Right? So you've got the water damage of the engines, the transmissions, the rear axles, the final drives. Then you have your carpeting that's damaged with water. Then the climate control system has got water in it. And your starter. And the electronics for shifting, because, today we have electronic shifting and we have fly-by-wire, which means that your gas pedal is not really connected to mechanical linkage. It's connected to a potentiometer, which controls the computer, which controls, how much fuel and when your engine gets fuel, and the shift points are controlled by a computer, and all that's flooded. So now you've got a car that needs to be either fixed with a lot of parts, or you need a new car because of the mold as well, right? And then, this isn't fresh water. It's not like taking your car and hooking up to a big magnet and then dipping it in the pool and taking it out. Your car and your house has been flooded with sewage. It's been flooded with chemicals. What kind of chemicals? Well, think about what's in your neighbor's garage. Think about what's in your garage. Insecticides, fertilizers. Then think about the septic systems that are going to be flooded. And then think about the lagoons that corporations have, industrial waste. And then think about the contamination to the wells. So what does this all mean? Where am I going with this? Well, I think that because of, let's say, a small 5% extra demand of these products, roofing shingles, tar paper, nails, wire, plumbing, rebuilding these houses, all of a sudden everybody's going to want theirs done right away. So there's going to be an increased demand very quickly for the replacement of all of these things that have been damaged. Houses, apartment buildings, corporate structures, all of this. Instant demand. It's going to happen in a couple weeks. Prices are going to go up. Well, at the same time, we've got tariffs. President Donald Trump has implemented tariffs, and it's affected steel. So now we find out that, in the United States, we don't have steel manufacturing. So if you have food that comes in what used to be called a tin can, we're having trouble getting enough tin cans to put the food in. So prices are going to go up because we have a shortage of steel right now, but we're going to have an even bigger shortage because of the increased demand from Hurricane Florence. So what does this all mean? It means I think you should get what you need right now, because I think the prices are going to go up, and I think there's going to be a supply chain disruption because caused by the increased demand of these things. Guineith, does that make sense to you?
That makes perfect sense. And, I hope some of these people have access to food that's been grown under plastic. The plastic would have been blown away by the hurricane. Oh, gee. Oh, no. this is another area. Anyone who had a home vegetable patch, the home vegetable patch would have been totally destroyed by these rains.
And commercial growing. Okay,
commercial growers would have lost their vegetable patches too. There came a photo across my Facebook page, one of my Facebook pages, because I've got a couple of Facebook pages, of hundreds of dead pigs in a commercial piggery, and the water came and flooded 6 inches deep through the piggery, and because the pigs were commercial large white pigs, they got no hair and no body fat, practically. They might have 10% body fat or whatever, but almost no body fat. They froze, and they killed over where they stood, and they died. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. And what's that going to do? That's just one piggery. What's that going to do to the prices of pork products? And considering that what a huge proportion of the meat supply in the United States actually consists of things like bacon, ham, and pork belly, sausages and manufactured meat, then I would say that the price of pork products and also other meat is going to go through the roof. And that's just pigs. What's happened to the chicken hatcheries? Chicken hatcheries, I would say, probably fared a little bit better because they tend to be inside. And they, as you know, tend to be quite well built. But if they had an electrical outage, then, the hatchery lights would have gone out. And I was just talking to a friend of mine tonight, and he had incubators, and he had an electrical interruption for just a few hours during the night a few weeks ago, and his incubators shut down, and he lost his eggs. He lost maybe a couple of hundred eggs that he was incubating. There's, multiple. And aren't Georgia, the Carolinas, and Virginia also, speaking of oil, major oil-producing areas?
Well, there is some oil, yes. But I don't know about major, but yes. Texas would be major, but yes, there is some in the areas that you mentioned. And by the way,
the nuclear plants. I know that there's nuclear plants in Virginia.
Yes, and in just about, most of the states on the East Coast of the United States have nuclear power plants. You're absolutely right. And what you're talking about is if the cooling system gets flooded or the electrical power grid goes down, well, they've got backup generators to keep the reactors from melting down by running these diesel generators, but they only have 1 week's worth of fuel. That's okay. We can get more fuel someplace else, maybe, right? Well, here you mentioned chickens.
Yes, the supply
we have chickens here
going within a week.
Well, here's a problem with chickens.
Good luck on that.
Yeah, our chickens. I don't think our chickens can swim. Well, if you have a floating situation and the chickens can't get high enough up, they can't swim and they're going to drown and die. So we have had thousands of chickens dead as a result of Hurricane Florence. And I'll bet you that's a number in the thousands. I don't think that's the right number. I think it's in the hundreds of thousands. That's my scientific guess, right? So hundreds of thousands of chickens dead. Now, where do they go? Well, right now they're rotting and they're decaying. Now we have a biohazard.
The disease.
Yes, we have a biohazard disease
from all these corpses lying around, rotting.
And,
chickens,
hogs.
From time to time, we've had it where there's been a kangaroo up in the forest that's just died or whatever, or by the side of the road somewhere upwind it's died, and it's really, really unpleasant.
Well,
really unpleasant.
If a cow dies in our neck of the woods, if one of our neighbor's cows dies, for example, you can smell it for a mile. That's just one cow.
Yeah.
So, and we haven't talked about the wildlife, right? We haven't talked about the small animals that are running around, the rabbits, the squirrels, the mice, the rats, they're in nature, that died, and they're rotting. This is a huge, huge problem. So, what do you get? Well, I would consider getting some water filtration. You can get it lots of places. You can get Berkey, you can get ProPure. My favorite is ProPure. And I think you ought to consider it.
But at the very least, boil your water.
At the least.
That's all drinking water, all water coming out of the faucet. If it's coming out of the faucet in your area, I can almost guarantee that the regular water treatment facilities are not working properly at the moment, and you need to boil that water for 10 minutes before you consume it, okay? Mm-hmm. And if you cannot boil the water, okay, there is a way that you can process the water so that it is not, so that it's not going to kill you if you drink it. You can get water purification tablets. If you have them on hand, certainly use them, of the type that are used for camping. Otherwise, I forget what the concentration is. If you have access to the internet, you can look up what the concentration is, but a low concentration of pool chlorine, or if you don't have swimming pool chlorine, even White King at a low concentration, okay, added to the water will actually kill the bacteria and make it safe. I don't know what the concentration is. You should easily be able to find that online. If you type in White King for water sterilization into your favorite search engine, you should be able to find it. But what it is White King is a chemical called sodium hypochlorite, HYPO chlorite. So, and it is the same substance that is used in swimming pool chlorine, but the difference is with pool chlorine it's a granule. With White King, obviously, it's a liquid. But it's the same thing. It's hypochlorite. And if you don't have hypochlorite and you really, really need to sterilize your water, you can also sterilize it by mixing it in with some, probably 3 parts of water to 1 part of vinegar. It will taste foul if you do that, okay? But it will sterilize your water. Do not drink the water coming out of your taps. If you have a private water supply, if you live off the grid, it depends on your own situation. You will be able to know if your water supply has been contaminated. But at this stage, I would say that it's a pretty sure thing to assume that all water coming out of your taps is contaminated. Okay, do not drink your drinking water. Okay, I think we're heading back into a break.
We are heading back into a break. Yeah, okay. And the EPA...
Hello, Vincent.
Yeah, the EPA says the chlorine level in drinking water would be up to 4 parts per million. 4 parts per million. Class, do your own research with this, because you can kill yourself by adding too much chlorine. Absolutely. Guineith is correct. She's correct. But make sure you do your own research. I don't want to be responsible for you dying of chlorine poisoning.
Really low dose.
Very low dose. Very, very, very low dose. We'll be right back right after top of the hour news and commercial announcements. Everyone all set, cocked, locked. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Guineith Isaacs is with us, and we're talking about water, and we're talking about the contamination of water. Well, I've got the numbers, Guineith. So if you're going to treat, and this is from, let's see, the website is Washington State Department of Health. Washington State Department of Health. And they're saying that if you're going to be drinking water from rain, lakes, rivers, streams, natural springs, ponds, you should probably disinfect it. All right. Now, here's what you can do. Now, this is regular chlorine bleach, not the scented kind, just plain. And it typically is plain 5.25 to 8.25% chlorine in the jug. Okay. Now you take that jug of plain chlorine bleach, and it doesn't have to be Clorox brand. It can be the house brand, but it has to be plain chlorine bleach. And they are saying, and I think this is a lot of chlorine. I would rather use a little bit less. But they're saying if you have a quart or a liter of water that you're going to treat, you would add 5 drops of chlorine bleach. So for a half a gallon, it seems like a lot, right? Did you say it does seem like a lot? I think it is.
I'll tell you what. I did some mental maths during the ad break.
Uh-huh.
Okay? And I came to the conclusion that pure, 100%, let's just assume it's 100% hypochlorite. You would need to add 1 mil of hypochlorite to every 1,000 liters of water.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that means 20 liters of 5%, 20 mils of 5%.
Mm-hmm.
So if you get a medicine glass and think of the amount of cough syrup you would give an adult, that would generally be 10 mils at a dose. Or a teaspoon, a metric teaspoon is 10 mils. Okay? That's 2 teaspoons of White King, metric teaspoons, not just ones out of your cupboard or whatever. 2 metric teaspoons of White King to 1,000 litres of water. So for a gallon, oh my gosh.
Yeah, but we're not talking about that high of a concentration of chlorine. We're talking about a diluted jug that they sell in the United States, which is about 5.25%.
I know, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about if it was 100%, that would be 1 mil, but at 5% concentration, that would be 20 mils.
Mm-hmm.
Because most of that's going to be water.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. Okay?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You get 25s in 100. So, yeah, that's, like I say,
right.
But that's to an IBC container of water. Okay? So if you've got 500 litres of water, okay, then that's going to be 10 mils. If you've got 50 litres of water, that's going to be 1 mil to 50 litres of water. If you've got 25 litres of water, that's going to be, which is around about a bucket, a big 20-litre bucket, okay? That's a 5-gallon bucket, half a mil, which is actually probably around about a drop.
Mm-hmm. So the bottom line...
I would say that that's about right. 1 drop.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
1 drop.
So, class, you got to be very, very careful with this.
20-litre bucket.
You've got to be very, very careful. You can
need
poison
to
yourself.
Go. This is a disclaimer. Do not do this unless you are absolutely unable to boil the water. Mm-hmm. Okay? This is a disclaimer. This is a very last resort for water sterilisation. If, like I said, you can put, with household vinegar, you can have a, even a 1 to 10 solution of household vinegar with water. That means 1 cup of vinegar to 10 cups of water, and that will sterilise the water. Okay? It'll taste disgusting, but you can drink it.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's a much safer route to go. Only use the hypochlorite, that's the Clorox, as a very, very last resort, and be extremely careful. 1 drop to a 20-litre bucket.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? That's probably about what you need.
I don't remember the exact amount, but I think it's pretty close to a gallon. And actually it was more than that. It's almost 2.5 gallons. Our neighbor was reading on a website how to disinfect as well, and he asked us what we thought, and we said, let's start with a cup of chlorine, diluted chlorine bleach that you buy. We'll call it Clorox. And he said, let's start with a cup, pour it down your well, and we gave him the procedure for doing that. And one of his children read on the internet that wasn't enough. They poured, I think, 2.5 gallons of dilute 5.25% chlorine bleach down their well, and it stunk of chlorine. It was not drinkable. Weeks. And I don't know what they were thinking, but, that's what they did.
Potent stuff.
It's a killer. It's a killer
really,
for cats
really
and dogs and cows and other animals. You want to be really careful. So here's what you can do. If you decide that you want to proceed, do your own research. Don't believe anything that we say. Do your own research, and I'll post a link to the Washington Department of Health and what they recommend on the website, USA Prepares. But if you decide that you want to try this, you ought to try it before you need to do it. Okay? And then you can heat that water up and volatilize the chlorine more quickly. So if you boil it for a few minutes, you will have that chlorine dissipate. If you can't heat it up, you can put it in the sun. But, of course, you may get some bugs in it, so you may want to protect your water from getting bugs. So make sure you have a container that you can do this in ahead of time before the flood. Okay? But this is something you need to know about and how to do it. So do the research, print it out, okay, and keep that with your emergency preparedness information. You need to print it out so you have it, because the internet may be down. You may not have power. You might not be able to surf the internet to read this later on. Print it out. So they say 5 drops of chlorine bleach, 5.25% to 8.25%. The kind of stuff you buy at the Chinese factory outlet or the dollar store. 5 drops to a quart or a liter of water. 10 drops to 2 quarts.
That's too much.
That's what I think.
In my humble opinion.
Me too. I agree. I'm thinking.
Not that means anything.
I think 1 drop would be. It's not very much.
1 drop would be too much.
Yes. I'm thinking.
I would say 1 drop to a 20-litre bucket.
Okay.
That's my calculation.
Yeah.
That's a 5-gallon bucket.
Yeah, and experiment, class. Experiment before you need to. Make sure you have everything ready. And you should have, in my opinion, a jug of chlorine, bleach, regular stuff, unscented, around the house all the time. And keep it in a safe place where it's not going to get punctured and it's not going to spill and the jug isn't going to rupture or break. Put it where it's safe. Seriously.
Up high.
Okay. So find that spot.
Especially if you've got children.
Find that spot in your house, and I think you should have it. I really do. Okay. So we talked about the contamination. Well, here is something from Vice News, V-I-C-E News. Okay, what's in the water? It's titled Hurricane Florence turning North Carolina into a toxic stew of pig poop, sewage, and coal ash. And North Carolina is home to the densest population of hogs in the country, with 2,100 hog farms, producing an estimated 40 million gallons of hog poop per day. 40 million gallons a day. Most of it is stored in 3,000 open pit earthen basins known as lagoons. What's a lagoon? Well, think about building a pond, and the backhoe and the bulldozers get there, and the excavators, and they scoop out the dirt. That's a lagoon. That's it. That's a lagoon. And it says here in this article, by noon of Thursday, a couple days ago, 4 hog lagoons in the hurricane area had been breached. 13 had overflowed, and 9 had been inundated. Another 55 were at or almost at capacity, in danger of overflowing, according to the Department of Environmental Quality. Big problem. Big problem. And that's just the hogs. Then you've got chicken poop. You know, there's plenty of chicken poop to go around, too. You just go to these factory farms, and you won't believe the smell of all that chicken poop. No kidding. So that's just 2 toxins that we need to worry about. We'll be right back. So, class, it's not just Guineith that's saying it. It's not just that I'm saying it. Well, in North Carolina, on Friday, over 5 million gallons of partially treated sewage spilled into Cape Fear River when a generator failed at Wilmington's wastewater treatment plant. And they say in this article, Vice.com, that anything above 1,000 gallons is considered significant. So, not 1,000 gallons spilled, over 5 million gallons of sewage, partially treated sewage spilled into the river. Okay, now, why? Because a generator had a problem. Well, water treatment plants are at the bottom of the hill. That's where all sewage runs downhill. So it's easy to flood them. In a press conference on Monday, the EPA's Director of Land and Emergency Management, Reggie Cheatham, said a separate sewage treatment plant in Jackson, North Carolina, had also, let me say it a different way, had also experienced a catastrophic failure over the weekend. So there have been reports of raw sewage leaking from manholes as well, according to the EPA. Then you add that to the hog waste, the industrial waste, all mixing with the water that's on the ground, which will contaminate the wells. Unbelievable. Pretty serious. Now, who caused this? Well, you can blame it on the storm, but I wouldn't. I'd blame it on us. I'd blame it on the stupidity of man. Who would think that this isn't going to happen? Who wouldn't think that we're going to have floods? How's that possible? Who in their right mind would put a nuclear reactor right on the coastline in Fukushima, Japan? Who would do that? And say, I think that's a great idea, and not worry about tsunamis. They didn't
just put it on a coastline, they put it on a fault line.
Right. And where do they put nuclear reactors? They put them where...
Stupidity.
Well, yes. So the energy companies, these electric companies, have got coal ash pits, and they don't know what to do with it. So they store it. And then it rains. And then what do you have? Heavy metals in the coal ash, polluting the water supply. So what happens? Well, that would be cancer, right? And here's one other thing. So the hurricane's coming, it's coming. We're watching the weather reports, and we're watching the map, and we're watching the area that they think it's going to land. And who's saying, you know what? Let's cover up the garbage. Let's cover up the trash. People are saying, are you kidding? We got to get out of here. We got to leave. So people leave everything. The trash, everything. And then the rain mixes with the trash, and it goes into the groundwater. Nobody's thinking about tomorrow. They're thinking about, like, right now. Let's get out of the way. That's the stupidity of man. And George Carlin said it best. Just think about how stupid the average person is, and then realize that half of them are more stupid than that. That's how we got here. Yeah. Guineith, what was on your list for today? I know we got derailed.
Okay. Oh, that's all right. I was going to discuss popular culture, specifically the comic books industry. Mm-hmm. Now, because I have teenage children, and I've got 2 teenage children, and I've still got 1 teenage son living at home, I get exposed to rather a lot of comic book material. And, what I'm seeing over the years is just a degradation of culture that's coming through the comic book industry. And thinking most specifically of the latest Deadpool movie. And if anyone has seen that, I wouldn't recommend that anybody see that. Actually they did, because I had a look on some of their publicity material online, and they were specifically going for an R18 rating on the latest Deadpool movie. And it's super violent, it's cringeworthy. It's on the level of Pulp Fiction. Actually, it would make Pulp Fiction look good.
Hold that thought. So, Guineith, you're talking about comics, and I'm at a disadvantage because I was really never interested in comics. So I don't know much about them. But please continue.
Okay. Anyway, despite the, really super violent nature of this film, it was, the Australian film raters still rated it MA 15+, okay? Which means basically that as long as a 15-year-old has their parent with them, they can view this video. So, about the only saving grace of this film is, at the end of the movie, the main villain, who happens to be a pedophile, who is named as a pedophile in the film, although you don't actually, see him doing stuff to the boys, he gets run over by a taxi cab. And I would say that's probably a good thing. And I would say that's probably the saving grace of the whole film, is that the bad guys actually do end up losing at the end of the movie. But it's not just that movie. It's a bunch of films. The level of violence, the level of inappropriate content, nudity, whatever, in movies is just becoming disgusting. You can hardly even watch a film these days without there being something that you've got to fast forward past because it's just too much, And, it's just, oh my gosh. I don't remember movies being like this when I was younger. I remember when Braveheart came out, And that was considered to be really, really quite violent. But the violence in that film was justified in that actually they were violent times. And you could not depict those times without having the violence depicted in the film. It wasn't gratuitous, if that makes sense. It was actually depicting the violence of battle in that day. And, you know, if you could transport yourself back into the times of William Wallace 800 years ago, and if you could see a war scene, I mean, it was violent. Even when my husband was a boy during World War II in Glasgow, there were three, actually, let me think. There was the Nazis fighting the Scots. There was the Orange Order fighting the Republicans. And then there was the gangs fighting each other. And so there were actually three wars going on in parallel with each other. And my husband would describe scenes where there were street battles going out and people would have swords. There weren't very many guns around, but there were swords, and there was a type of dagger, which is a Scottish dagger called a skein dhu or a dirk, and it's a type of throwing knife. And they would have these, and it was gory at the time. And if you wanted to depict that, I think that the closest film would be The Gangs of New York. It would be something similar. But, you know, this movie, it's like, why? Why does there have to be so much violence in the films today? Especially films that are supposedly comic book films. It's like the comic books are not for children anymore, that they are more written for an adult audience, but even then, they're not something that your average grown-up would really want to read. Do you know what I mean, Vincent?
Yeah, I do. And, you know, as you were saying this, I did a quick search of two Sesame Street characters. Sesame Street was an alleged children's television show that first aired in 1969. And there were two characters. One was named, they were guys, Bert, and the other was Ernie. And they had this, like, friendship, a special friendship. And it's been debated over the years whether they were, you know, just buddies or whether they were queer. Oh.
Yeah, especially since
can't
they
say queer
sleep
anymore?
in the same bedroom.
Yeah,
in
homos.
Bed.
So whether Bert and Ernie were can you say homos? I'm not sure if you can say homos or queer, but anyway. So we're not sure if they were homosexuals or not. But then again, here's what happened. This image I'm looking at, so one of the characters, they're both in this pair, one's got his arm around the other one, and it's this special relationship. And so what kind of colors is he wearing? Well, one of them is wearing a horizontal striped shirt. The colors in it are white, red, blue, and the sleeves or the cuffs are yellow. The other one's wearing white, blue, green, orange, rainbow colors. And according to this article that I'm reading in thesun.co.uk, it says, now, quote, now after decades of speculation, one of the show's writers has lifted the lid on its most famous and beloved characters. That would be Bert and Ernie. Mark Saltzman, S-A-L-T-Z-M-A-N, who joined the Sesame Street team in 1984, has revealed he did indeed write Bert and Ernie as a gay couple. There you have it. So we're showing our children a television show which in 1984, the writer who joined the team in 1984 did indeed write Bert and Ernie as a homosexual couple for our children to enjoy.
Oh, gosh.
So we've been programming our children.
Makes my stomach turn.
Yes. Well, more than that. More than that. It makes me angry. And our daughter went to the university at 14 years old. She was studying. She wanted to learn Spanish. And so there was a Spanish class at the nearby university, and Mrs. Finelli or I would take her to school because she was homeschooled, and she finished her education by 14, so she'd started college at 14. And she came back one day and she said, "Well, Dad, being gay is just, it's an alternative." It's like, what? Are you kidding me? An alternative? I said, "Sweetheart, if these guys were plumbers and they tried those techniques in plumbing, there'd be leaks everywhere. It wouldn't work." And so that was my reaction to what our daughter was saying. And, they had these gay and lesbian meetings, and it was becoming more and more out of the closet. So then I typed in just now, gays Disney World, because I remember reading that there is what's called Gay Days at Walt Disney World. This is, if you want to read a class, at wikipedia.org. Quote, "Gay Days at Walt Disney World is a loosely organized event where lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender individuals, their families, friends, and supporters go to Walt Disney World on a single day each year, held on," so if you want to go, here's when it is, class, "held on the first Saturday in June. And it is now one of the largest gay pride events in the world." At Disney. Class, I got to tell you, you're not going to see me at Disney, just in case I were to make a mistake and go on the wrong day. Okay? I'm not going to...
Oh, no.
I'm not going to Disney. And I was talking with Steve and Carolyn last night, and they said to me, Steve said to me, "So, Vincent, how did you do it? I mean, what do you do? How do you survive? How do you earn a living?" And I said, "Well, I am very frugal. I don't buy anything new. It's trying to figure out how I'm getting along, with no job. Okay, how do I do it? Well, I'm frugal. I told them that I bought a new car recently. It's a 1996 Mercedes. I paid $3,000 for it. To me, it's a brand new car. I don't have anything that's new. Everything that we buy is old, except for spare parts. They'll probably be new for our farm. But other than that, the tractors are new. The equipment's new. The tractors are used, new to us, but they're used, rust-colored. And all of our furniture is antiques, but it was really rough looking before we got it. And my mom or my wife would refinish it. So we spent very little on the things that we bought, but they're, if you look at them, they're probably pretty nice. But that's because we put a lot of elbow grease into making them nice. Okay? So we live very frugally, and you're not going to see me on vacation. I don't do that. I don't go on vacations. I work. That's all I do is I work. And I fix everything, or our son does, or our family does. And we are a family unit, and we work together, and we plan together. We have meals together. We decide what we need to do, who's going to do it, who's responsible for it, what the priorities are. Then we talk about, have we done it, what happened, do we need to do a better job next time? That's how we live. So we make fewer mistakes. We buy in quantity. We buy when it's on sale. We only buy things that we need. We're not impulse buyers, and we don't take vacations. So to answer Steve's question, that's how. And I think, Guineith, you do the same thing, right?
Pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Pretty well.
So Bert and Ernie class are gay or homosexuals or whatever the term is. Now you know. We'll be right back. Guineith? We're in the last segment of the broadcast class today. Is there something that you want to bring up, or do you want to talk about this black man that was shot dead by a Dallas white female cop in his own apartment?
Okay.
What would you like to do?
What I would like to say, I would just like to put a cap on what we said in the last segment. I'd like to very quickly discuss 3 case studies, okay? They are the city, and these are 3 cities or villages that suffered the same fate, as far as we can tell, okay? And all of them because they accepted into their culture homosexuality on a rampant scale, and also pedophilia. And they are these are all cities from the from the past that have been excavated archaeologically, where we know what happened. Sodom, okay? They have done an archaeological excavation of Sodom, and I actually have a photo on my Facebook page, and I might repaste it tomorrow because it's on my computer as well. There is a group of adults that were, their remains were discovered, huddled together, and then there is a child lying in the middle of the floor, separate from the adults. Nobody cares about the child. And they were encased in whatever they were encased in, and when they did the excavation, that was the scene that they found. The adults were all huddled in a group together, and the child at that time did not even feel safe going to the adults for comfort. Now, why do you suppose that was? Case study number 2, Pompeii, okay? They have done an archaeological excavation of Pompeii and also Herculaneum, that were destroyed by Mount Vesuvius. They found such rampant pornographic art and sculptures through the whole city that displayed homosexuality, bestiality, and pedophilia on a rampant scale. And they found homosexual couples that sheltered together and were encased in the mud flows, in the ash flows that flowed through the city, and were entombed forever. Homosexual couples, men with men and woman with woman, and their last acts were to basically shelter together. So, these were the Ernie and Berts of the ancient world, and that was their fate. The 3rd case study was only in the 19th century, June the 6th, 1886. Tarawera in New Zealand. That's Tarawera, if anyone wants to search it. In New Zealand, June the 6th, 1886. The ancient, he was well over 100 years old, the medicine man of that village prophesied that the city would be destroyed by 4 demons that would break out from the mountain because the men of the village were selling their daughters into prostitution. Well, that can only mean one thing. And everybody in that community was killed except for the old medicine man the Maori guide who believed him, who was the only one in the community who believed him, and several dozen people who managed to pack themselves into the Maori guide's house, tiny, tiny house, which was smaller than 100 square feet. You are playing with fire when you do this on a massive scale.
Guineith, we're out of time. Thank you so much for being with us live in Australia. Guineith Isaacs.